I am a born and raised Christian, so my story starts way back when I was a young kid. Every weekend my family went to church. I spent my summers at Bible camp with friends, and I prayed by my bed each and every night, doing the things that I thought Christians do. I've been blessed with great Christian influences in my life, people who have prayed for me and continually reminded me of just how great our God truly is. Looking back now, I had faith in Christ and believed all of those things, but I didn't walk by faith. Through a majority of my 18 years, I was just going through the motions, putting my faith on the back burner and continuing on with my life and the things that I wanted to do. Don't get me wrong, I believed it all to be true, and my faith had remained a component of my life, but it was never a top priority. I convinced myself that by going through these motions, I was actively pursuing Christ and a relationship with Him. My faith life was constantly filled with ups and downs. I would attend conferences and retreats and come back on fire for the Lord. But when reality sunk in and I had returned to my usual daily schedule, I would push God and all the things I had just learned aside. The transition from middle school to high school was where I noticed the biggest decline in my faith. I had to choose between sports and youth group. Sports won. I was too old to continue going to church summer camp, and many of my friendships started to change. My junior year of high school, I attended 2 conferences that began to change my mindset. The first was over New Year's, where I learned a lot about taking control of my faith and establishing a relationship with God. I wouldn't say that from this retreat I really started actively pursuing God, but from this point on, my faith was something that I thought about a little bit more. It was no longer something that I merely shoved aside. The second retreat that year was in Colorado. To this day, I'm even surprised that I went. When I had signed up, I thought that some of my friends were also going on the trip, but by the time the conference came around, I only knew one other person going, and she was flying there. That meant I would be riding on a bus for 15 hours without knowing anybody. It would have been so easy for me to back out. I could have used so many excuses on why not to go, but I was compelled to go. I knew in my heart that God had something to offer me from this conference. This conference is where my attitude really began to change. Getting on the bus was one of the hardest things I have ever done, and God really provided for me in that week. I met some awesome people who were so in love with God, and it instilled in me a drive to one day get that same passion. It's something that I still strive for. I learned so much about what it means to give control of my life to God and to forfeit my own plans to do what God has planned for me. Coming home, I was fired up. This time, the fire lasted through most of the summer, but when school resumed, I got caught up in what is the chaos of senior year. I never completely pushed my faith aside, but it wasn't integrated into my daily life. For me, senior year wasn't all that it's cracked up to be. Socially, parts of my life seemed to be falling apart. I kept thinking back to Colorado and all of the things that I learned there, but I still couldn't give control over the situations to God. I knew how I felt, and I knew how I wanted things to go. Therefore, I thought I could solve all of my problems on my own. Well, now that I'm almost 6 months out of high school, I can tell you that I did not have all the answers, and that my methods didn't produce the outcomes that I had hoped for. Coming to college has probably been the biggest turning point for me, because here I've had to take my faith into my own hands. There are no more reminders from Mom to read my Bible and to go to church. I have to do all of that on my own. I had heard of Crew from my older sister, and I had even attended once with her while I had visited. From that first day, I knew Crew was something that I wanted and needed in my life. It was so refreshing and encouraging to hear from people my own age about the things that they struggle with and to come together with hundreds of fellow students to worship and learn about God. I'm not saying that in the 6 weeks I've been a part of Crew, all of my troubles have gone away and that I've been able to give control of my life completely up to the Lord. But in the short time that I have been here, I have experienced the joy that so many talk about. I now know what it feels like to be so on fire for the Lord that it's all I can think about, and it's something that I want everyone to experience. My life is by no means perfect, and I still have struggles, but I have felt the unending joy of God. My story isn't over. My story is actually just beginning. I know that surrendering control of my life to God will be a never-ending struggle. Posting this video is actually one of the scariest things I have done. To be frank, sharing about God at all scares me because I know that I don't have all the answers. But I also know that if I don't, I am not helping others to experience the same joy that I have. Thank you for listening to my story.